look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Well, it's time for hemp, and we want to thank you for tuning into our broadcast. As you can tell, we do appreciate those who enjoy the ganja, and if you enjoy the ganja, this program is right up your alley, or should I say, right in your garden. Today, we are going to be talking about garden materials. Sweet leaf is what we like to refer to it. I am sure those of you out there understand the term sweet leaf. And also, if you like this broadcast, please hit the like button below. If you haven't already, please subscribe and share us with your friends. Do make it a point to go to timeforhemp.news and check out all of our podcasts. We have a large archive of material there that's all free to download. And now on the website, there's lots of free music that you can also download from the amazing group, The Illusions of Music. And all the songs are about our wonderful plant, cannabis. On the program today, we are going to be focusing on the sweet leaf of cannabis. But before we kick off this round of interviews, let me bring on one of my joint hosts. And don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, hit your pipes, your bongs, your vaporizers, and your joints, and take time for hemp. So let me bring one of our joint hosts onto the big broadcast. He's an author. He's written a fantastic book available on Amazon, and I would encourage you to get it. We're going to let him tell you a little bit about it. Our joint host, Byrne.
Thank you, Casper. Hi, folks. I wrote a book. It's called For Country and Cannabis. And in the book, I do recommend you not use a bong, even though Casper brings that up every week. And actually, I don't recommend you use a joint. My favorite, and I'll tell you why, is just a pipe, a simple Pyrex pipe. And here's why. And this is what the book is. The book is 360 pages long, and it's about my journey, if you will, through the Navy, 24 years. See, I was a CB once, and then how cannabis interfaced with the military during those years, the Reagan years, war on drugs, Just Say No, Nancy Reagan, all that crap. And then I got out of the Navy and I went to work. I ran normal for a while, and then I ran Patients Out of Time, and then I ran Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, and a bunch of other stuff that you can read about in the book. But in the book, there's a Canadian, Al, one of our co-hosts here, Al Graham is a Canadian, and Mark Ware is his name, very famous physician up in McGill. And he did a study for Health Canada, which said that if you smoke cannabis in a joint, you get about 10% of the product. If you smoke cannabis in a bowl, well, I'll skip the bowl. If you do it in a bong, you get about 40%. So good. And then if you do it in, like I do in a pipe, you'll pull 85 and 90%. So from a financial point of view, you want to use a pipe. And then there's the issue of your lungs. Using a bong is not good. And the reason I say that is because I was personally talked to by a wonderful pulmonary doctor, Donald Tashkin, who, if you know anything about cannabis and smoking, he's the man. And he told me a long time ago, he said that even if you're the only one that uses that bong, you will leave a bacteria there when you use it on Tuesday that'll still be there on Wednesday, and it could be bad for you, even though it's your bacteria. Don't do it. And so I'm shortening this up because we're going to get to our guests. The other ones are supposed to do all the talking here. But I just want to finish that. And he said, how do you do it, Al? And I said, and he said, now, he says, get 3 pipes. 3. He says, use number 1 today. And number 2 has been cleaned and is drying somewhere. And number 3 is in the solution to clean it. I use Purple Power. A lot of people use alcohol. I recommend Purple Power. It's a degreaser. You just drop it in there, leave it there for 24 hours, pull it out, hot water, let it dry for a day, and you're good to go. And so the one that was drying, that's what I use tomorrow. The one I use today goes in the Purple Power. Anyway, so I wrote the book. Some of this stuff's in there, a lot more. If you're interested in the cannabis history, and you should be, if you're in the cannabis business, and I know a lot of you are or want to be, you need to read the book. But let me introduce our next co-host, another Al, a Canadian guy named Al Graham, who also has a way to influence and educate people called Pace Radio. You out there, Al?
I am here. Thanks,
There
Al.
he is.
Casper. How you guys doing? I know of Dr. Mark Ware, and he has that had that smoking study. So yeah, I know about him. He's done actually a smoking study also on pain and how it can help with pain just through the smoking of it all. So, and as you say, Dr. Taskin.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and as far as Pace Radio, People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network, you find us at paceradio.net. We broadcast something every day of the week, psychedelics as well as cannabis.
And I want to mention something about Dr. Taskin. I got the chance to meet Dr. Taskin when I was part of the UCLA study back in 1989, I believe it was, 90. And Jack Hare arranged for that. I made it possible for me to be the first person to be filmed smoking legal cannabis provided by the United States government. And you can find that on the website at timeforhemp.news. Dr. Taskin, I think, had one of the first studies about cannabis, and it was a very valuable study. You should check it out. You can find it on the internet. And it was a really interesting event to be a part of. I did not mean to interrupt Al Graham. I'll let you go on and introduce our joint our joint guest here in a minute. But I just want people to know that if you want to see somebody getting silly and high legally, you can go to timeforhemp.news and find that video. Go ahead, Al Graham, and bring on our joint guest.
All right.
She's a sweet leaf person herself, and she does love the sweet leaf.
Well, I've never met our guest, Reverend Heidi, and she is the founder of the Sugarleaf Church, and she's also been in the news. Some people might be saying, stirring up some trouble, but I would say this is how some of us create change, and that is by standing up and saying, hey, this stuff works. That's how cannabis got legalized here in Canada, and more people are speaking up about psychedelics, and I look forward to hearing more from Rev Heidi. And there we go, Rev Heidi.
Reverend Heidi Grossman-Lepp.
There you go. Yes. Just so you know, Rev Heidi, your mic is muted.
Now it's not.
No,
there you go.
There you go.
And thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate all your time and attention.
You're welcome.
Well, I had a chance to first hear your voice when you got married to Eddie Lepp. And why don't we just kick off the show and let everybody know about how much cannabis was at your wedding?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, I was raided shortly after my wedding, and they got 30,000 pounds from me.
30,000 pounds.
And everything at the wedding, I think you had hemp clothing, you had hemp leaf necklaces, you had CBD foods. And it was just an amazing, I think you even had a band that sang about cannabis. I don't know. I'll let you tell more about it.
Yeah, their names are Mendo Dope Boys, or they're the Mendo Dope Band now, because they're.
Okay.
I knew them when they were very young, starting out, but they have just really taken off and blown up. I think they're on their 36th album. Yeah, and
Wow.
it's just all. It was just like my wedding. It's all about cannabis. And they really have a strong voice. So check them out if you can. Mendo Dope. Yeah, they
All
were
right.
awesome.
So
All right.
before you met Eddie Lepp, was you active in the cannabis movement, or did Eddie Lepp introduce you to the world of cannabis?
No, I introduced myself to the world of cannabis. The first time I got caught growing, I was 13. So
13? Oh my goodness.
I've just always been drawn to that plant. I couldn't help it. But yeah, my neighbor saw my brother and I walking up we lived in the Santa Monica Mountains in Malibu Canyon area. And so we were climbing up the hill and then behind the vineyard, and the neighbor saw us carrying buckets of water up the hill. And so that's how we got caught.
Was Jack at the top?
What's that?
You're carrying buckets of water up the hill. I just wondered if Jack was at the top.
Oh, no. We just had some Mexican red brick stuff,
Right.
That was back in the like late 70s, early 80s. So
what got you involved in cannabis activism? What made you start standing up publicly and saying we got to end prohibition and make this plant available for everybody who needs it?
So back, I have had seizures my whole life, and then they got worse after I had children. And so I was trying to take, pharmaceuticals, because when I had my kids, I just quit. I lived in soccer mom town, and it just wasn't appropriate. And I just kind of left that behind and, focused on my family. And then, my kids got a little older, and I was just really struggling getting through school. I was trying to get into law school. And so I just did a lot of research on cannabis. There were I was in college, and there was all these kids saying it can cure cancer. I was like, what? So I left before we knew it could cure cancer. So anyway, I looked more into it, and I just really started thinking, wow, this is good for epilepsy. So I would have 2 to 3 grand mal seizures a month. This was back in 2007. And so I decided to quit all pharmaceuticals. And then was it between 2007 and 9, because I was playing around a bit with cannabis pharmaceuticals. And then I just quit them all and started growing my own. And I didn't have a seizure for 18 months. And I have one maybe every year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Boy.
So yeah, it saved my life. It got me off all the pharmaceuticals. It saved my life, but it also brought a lot of shit. in costumes, looking like pigs, like, yeah, it brought a lot of heat, because when I do something, I strive to be the best at it. So, and currently here I am, the best at winning Religious Freedom Restoration Act cases, and I am on number 29. And
29.
I have 29 criminal cases. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for our members of the church. So every time a member gets in trouble, I've had a couple of cases that were kind of lengthy and a struggle, but then the judges finally realized, ooh. So, yeah, number 29. But the last one we won was Las Vegas. And Las Vegas was my toughest case. It was my toughest. It was even tougher than my own case. But that case we just won. I'm so excited. But normally now it just takes a letter to send. I just write a letter to the DA. I write a letter to whoever needs to be written a letter to, and then the case usually goes away. Or the judge will throw it out. Yeah, they don't want that in the courtroom because they know I'll win. And that's, unfortunately for people like Eddie Lepp and Roger Christie, and some of the people that have done some hard federal time while we were still 215 legal, right? The difference now is when in 215, when we got the Breyer ruling with Lynette Shaw, that was huge, which, reinforced the Rohrabacher-Farr Act saying, no, there's no federal funding for state medical cannabis. And so that is why they never gave me a federal case, because they caught me trafficking out of state. I got caught trafficking from Florida to Michigan, California to Texas, New Mexico, Nevada. Yeah. So.
Well, I know Lynette. I don't know if you know, but Lynette Shaw wrote the theme song for Time for Hemp. She saw it in Berkeley. She saw the third segment, and at that time we were using the Funny Reefer Man by Cab Calloway as our theme song. And I got this telephone call out of nowhere by this woman named Lynette Shaw, who said she loved my show and she thought I needed a theme song. And she asked me what would I like for her to write. And I said, well, it became illegal in 1937. Why don't you do a 1930s jazz song? And about 14 days later, a little cassette showed up in the mail. And that's what you hear at the end of all of our programs, even to this day. Lynette went through a lot, being the first cannabis dispensary in California, well, actually in America. And she dealt with the fight with the IRS and finally won that. So she's a heck of a pioneer and quite a hemp hero in the movement. So I can certainly tell you I appreciate her work. And now, Al Graham, I know, thank you for the introduction. And I'm going to shut up and let Al Byrne ask his question, because I do sometimes have a tendency to rattle on. So the best way to shut me up is to hit the pipe.
There you go, joint.
Yeah, that's the best thing, Casper. Just keep smoking and shut up. Listen, Heidi, let's get our audience up to speed. Casper covers decades in sentences. Where are you physically located?
I'm pretty much all over the place right now. After I won my trial, I went back to my, I was with Eddie in Lake County. And then after Eddie and I had to separate, I went back up to Yuba County, and I just went up and did some healing, and I did a lot of work. I grew a commercial psilocybin farm. I learned everything I could to know about psilocybin mushrooms, because I was going to reopen the church, but I was recognizing, okay, now I'm going to need to bring forward facing the psilocybin. So that's when I said, okay, now I have to go be the best at what I'm going to go do. And I did pretty well. I was pretty successful. I was proud of myself. I entered the third psilocybin cup in Oakland, and I won out of 500 entries.
All right. There you go.
Yeah. Now it's time to open the church. I'm ready. So,
so you did all this legal work. You were always in California when you were doing this work outside of the state.
Yeah.
So when you said they busted you, you mean you were actually physically carrying it? Were you mailing it? I mean, what was going on there that they chased you down?
We were mailing it.
Okay, so they got you, and then you put your return address on it, did you?
Oh yeah, or I would have people put specific paperwork in it that said this is religious sacrament, boom, 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 and this is where it needs to go. And if anybody,
so some of this was you did figuring you were going to get busted so that you could take it to court. Was it that?
Well, let me tell you how my first case went.
All right.
So I had a pastor. His name was Pastor Tony, and we had just opened a church in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so he was traveling on the airplane, and there's a whole news article on it on YouTube. Man claims religious liberty played role in marijuana shipment. So the sheriffs pulled him off the airplane at Stockton Airport, and he had a couple duffel bags full of, you know how I do it, a lot of weed. So, and it wasn't flour, it was just edibles and all, you know, pens and things like that. And so they arrested him, threw him in jail, and they let him go. And then the next day we went to the court because he had a bail hearing. And so we went in, I filed some paperwork that I added myself as a joinder to the criminal charges. I said, I'm basically a confession. I'm the responsible party. That was mine. I told him to do it. And I also went into the court that day with 3 ounces of weed. That's on video too. They made me take it outside, but I had someone to help. And so anyway, what happened was that motion in the confession, the judge got it. He called like 9 pot cases before us and what made us last. He wouldn't even call our name. He pointed to us, and then he pointed to the DA, and then he pointed to my motion, and he goes, "You take this in the hallway." And the DA was like, "What? Take a case in the hallway?" Okay. He's looking at it like, what the hell? And so we go out there and he reads that. And then he says, "You got some balls. You're asking me for criminal charges on a federal offense. Yes, I would like a trial."
What the?
You know, Joe, I was wearing this beautiful Rasta crown. I had my Rastafarian cape on. And they even asked me to take my crown off. I said, absolutely not. So anyway, the DA said, "I'm going to get back to you and check your points and authorities," meaning I'm going to call the feds and tell them I got you. So I was hoping for that because we had new federal law, right? I wanted a new case. And so they just refused to give me one. They sent me back the motion. They whited out the whole stamp. They took it off the record. I'm like, what? You can't take it off the internet.
So you wanted to go at it federally in order to make it countrywide versus something that was state related, right?
On a religious basis, yes. Yeah. For cannabis, right? I mean, we've won so many since then, but that was my goal. And I wanted, and they wouldn't give it to me. I mean, I even I did live on Facebook one time. I went into the marshal's office in the federal building in Sacramento. And I said, "Hey, according to you, I'm breaking the law. And I have a lot of weed that I grow. And I'm confessing, I'm turning myself in. Please give me a case." And then just chaos breaks out behind the scenes. You know, there's like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And then they finally like, "You need to leave." And this was right when Eddie was on probation. So Eddie's probation officer, we were in that building a lot because we had to go visit probation. So we were consistently in there, and then we had a federal case in there. So we frequented that federal building quite often, and they were just like, "Oh, please leave."
Well, I know Eddie was a lot like that. I mean, Eddie intentionally grew his cannabis out in the open so anybody could see even from the road. And when the feds came up and pulled up all these plants, the very next day he was out putting new plants in. And Eddie was pretty much like that, like you. Just come on, let's take it.
Oh. Yeah. You gave Eddie a case, and I studied it. I know how to beat it. Now that I have rulings, I know how to win this case. So, and I did it in pro per too, by the way. Let me explain that to you. And I'll tell you right up front, every time I get someone, not my members, but like a rando person that is using cannabis religiously, and they find out about me and they have an attorney already, And I say, okay, tell your attorney, here's what you do. 1, 2, 3. We have 20 whatever cases. Ask your attorney how many he's won, and just file this and see what happens. And they go, I'm not putting my name on that. What? Like, no. And then they lose the case. They lose the case after they take those people's money. And by the way, I've never taken $1 from anybody on any 29 cases. I've done it all pro bono. And the only time I have used an attorney was with Joseph Tully, and he is our top. Some people say top 10. I say top number 1 trial attorneys in our nation. And so what happened was I was in pro per through all the motions. I'm like, Joseph, I'm seriously not wasting your time for the next year or two sitting in front of the judge for her to say, deny, no, deny. And by the way, Miss Lepp, I just want to put on the record what you're wearing today.
Really? They hold that against you?
I drove her nuts. And yeah. And so anyway, trial was coming up and we were setting trial, and she was adamant, Mrs. Lepp, and she kept refusing to call me Reverend because I would say it's Reverend. And so, anyway, she said, I'm warning you now. You can take the plea of a misdemeanor with no probation and go home. And they offered me that 3 months in. Yeah, every time, take the deal. I'm like, no, not today, not tomorrow. So the judge was telling me that I will not be represented at trial after I wouldn't take the plea deal. And so the day of trial came, and I went to the emergency room because I was having chest pain and I could no longer medically represent myself. So I called my attorney, Joseph, and he showed up pro bono. And we won.
All right.
6 weeks later, it was a 6 weeks long trial. But the best part of what came out of that trial for me when it comes to the civil portion of this case is the sergeant in charge, Sergeant Brandon Spears, said that he knew me. He'd known I'd been in the county. I had 12 properties there. And he said he raided me because I started calling my collective a church.
Oh,
That's funny. I mean, you think that would make him want to leave you alone more?
yeah.
Well, not to the people that discriminate against cannabis users as a whole, no matter whether you're medical, recreational, or religious. People discriminate against our culture. They have discriminated and called us dirty hippies, of all things.
So, Reverend Heidi, I think we need to explain, I assume, because I don't know, that you're a Rastafarian. You've referenced that. Is that true?
I do practice Rastafarian beliefs. I was born and raised Christian. I've embraced the Jewish faith. I've embraced the Buddhist faith. I embrace anything that is like positive, and life-changing for people. When it comes to religion, I don't, this is my personal belief, and I believe everyone should have their own personal beliefs and their own relationship with their creator as an individual. Right.
Okay.
So,
but when you go to a court and you say to the judge, I have a church, the judge is going to say what denomination or what is it? How do you answer that question?
Well, we're non-denominational, right?
Okay.
We do not judge. And we have atheists in our church. So whatever walk of faith that you're from, we accept you. We just don't preach any type of religion in our church. We just teach, about the cannabis healing, the spiritual healing, the use of the mushrooms. And whatever your creator dictates to you, that's the path that you should be walking, right? Your personal relationship with God. So I'm about all different faiths, right?
So,
Well,
yeah.
well,
So
well,
you want to integrate cannabis. You want people to understand that they can integrate cannabis into their spiritual life. That's your,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
It all
Good.
begins with, all healing begins with our spiritual healing, right? Like who put us here? Our creator. Some people call it God. Some people, there's so many names for God. But my God doesn't dictate anybody do anything. My God doesn't dictate what you wear. My God doesn't dictate what you say.
well, Heidi, there is a heaven for atheists. I don't know if you knew that. There's a heaven for atheists. There's nobody there, but there's a heaven for atheists. Absolutely. So now you tell me that you got busted shortly after your wedding with 30,000 pounds of cannabis. That's absolutely amazing. Is that like, did Eddie just harvest just a crop or something? Or is that just what you just normally buy each week to get you and your friends high? What's up with that?
Well, at least we try religiously.
Keep trying.
Yeah. So how I got to that number, well, let me just say when Eddie came home, he was not allowed on any type of cannabis farm. So I had to go through just some pretty strict scrutiny from the feds to let him come home to my house. So, and the first thing that the probation officer said when she walked us in, smells like marijuana. So anyway, we finagled that and we got him home. So yeah, he wasn't allowed on any farms. But while Eddie was gone, when Eddie left, he was the largest cannabis church, right? And so by the time Eddie got home, I had set up 365 farms in our collective network. So I will do all their legal paperwork, keep them papered up, put stuff wherever they get rated. Make sure they take a picture of that. And then, yeah, we were really forward facing and very transparent with law enforcement, with the federal government. Here's exactly what we're doing. We went through 20 raids. So on those 365 farms, I think I was around 350 farms when I got raided in Yolo County with an agency called Trident. So I paid the county money. I wrote the ordinance, help them do it. I'd spent all my time, of course, my resources, my contacts, all to be raided.
Wow.
I was executive director of for Yolo County at the time too. So I was just like, nope, I'm gonna go with Eddie and I'm gonna follow his guidance. Because I used to talk to Eddie every day in prison and we would talk about our faith. We would talk about his case. And I had just been learning the law because my first raid, I was in law school. And then I decided, you know what? I'll find another way because then I have nothing to lose. I don't need a law license. If I go into court, they're going to take it from me anyway. So
Right.
I got work for nothing. So I just kind of followed and led, where the Spirit took me. And here we are. And so I had 160 churches by the time they raided me.
All right.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
now you mentioned Roger Christie. Roger was a champion at the time for Hemp Broadcasting Network back in 1990, and I met him through Jack Hare. Now, does Roger's church work in association with your church? Or do you guys do events together? What's going on there?
We just did a little work. It wasn't necessarily together. We did it as a group for Deschedule Earth.
Okay.
And Roger was discussing, his plight. I'm actually working on an open letter that's going to be going out to Hawaii on the 17th of this week.
Okay.
And it's
Why don't you tell people a little bit about Deschedule, the Deschedule website and the Deschedule team?
right. So we don't want cannabis on the schedule. And now with the church model, now that we're going to be going through a really big expansion at this point, with the double jeopardy and all the protections and legal standings we have in place, we want to get people on board to understand that scheduling cannabis is wrong, that it's God's divine gift to us, we the people, and it belongs to us, right? Regulations and taxing. Not only that, when you do that to that plant, when you do taxing and abusing and regulating and controlling God's gifts, it's never going to come out well for you.
Let me jump in here just for the audience and maybe you. In 2023, in the summer, July, the United Nations descheduled cannabis. There was a universal vote, and cannabis was close, but it was taken out of the schedule, which means the United Nations has undone the restrictions placed on it by the 1961 Single Convention Treaty. So what does that mean for the United States? Well, there is a law, federal law, related to that treaty. And basically, of course, just paraphrasing here, but basically the U.S. law says that if the UN changes the restriction on any given substance, including cannabis, the Attorney General of the United States, the federal Attorney General, Miss Bondi right now.
She knows me.
Yeah, looks like you. Has the Attorney General has to reschedule cannabis in the United States to comply with the United Nations schedule, which for the United Nations, again, is, as Heidi said, deschedule. That hasn't been done. Veterans have guys and me and a couple other guys have got a letter to Miss Bondi right now. And we've let her know that we know these things, and we gave her all the references and stuff. Now, it's not her, right? We just sent her the letter, and I can't assume she knows all this shit. She got a lot going on, and I know she got a big staff. But we sent this letter to Mr. Biden's Attorney General, and he had it for a couple of years and did nothing. But anyway, to help your legal cases, that's sort of been decided by the United Nations. And the other thing I stress, Heidi, and I hope I can see you do, but you haven't used the word yet in my presence. And I want people to understand that what we're talking about is cannabis, a plant. It's a plant. It's not a drug. It's a plant. Now, Heidi grows plants. It's got roots. It needs water, sun, soil, all that stuff. It's not something that is manufactured except by the creator. So it's a plant. And one thing that I think the audience needs to start looking at is, and Heidi brought this up, she says, why are we regulating this stuff? Why has it got all these taxes and all these rules? And I don't know. We don't do that with bananas. We don't do that with onions. We don't do that with lettuce. We don't do that with kumquats. We don't do that.
Tomatoes.
But all of a sudden, cannabis is not a plant in the minds of law enforcement, in the minds of legislatures. And I just urge the audience, religious or not, start thinking yourself of this as a plant. There's plants, we have thousands and thousands of plants that come into this country. And custom looks them over, and the agriculture department decides if they're a good plant or a bad plant. Every plant on earth is like this, except cannabis. So that's my
but now, Al Byrne, unless I'm mistaken, you're talking about cannabis. Aren't you referring to marijuana?
Well, I've always been against the term marijuana because it's a slang. It's Mexican. It denigrates the plant. I don't like it when people call it weed or pot or any other damn thing. It's cannabis. And years and years ago, I mean, 25 or 30, I had to go through this conversation with people like Heidi and Al and Casper, who were advocates of the cannabis plant and called it marijuana. And I kept saying at that point in time, would you stop it? Let's change the way people see this plant. And one way you changed it is using the proper vernacular, the proper vocabulary. And now we still see marijuana a lot, but cannabis has taken hold. and that's good for what the four of us are trying to do.
Yeah.
Now, I
Question
do want to
for
say
Heidi.
this before I do
Go
want to
ahead.
say before we move. I want
Go
to say
ahead.
this before we move forward is that when you go to the Time for Hemp website, you will find the word marijuana frequently utilized, but it's because of the algorithms that are on the internet. And I do that so if someone types in a question about marijuana, it
Yep.
will lead them to the website Time for Hemp, where they can learn that they need to call the plant cannabis.
Cannabis.
Well, that's an excellent point. If you Google, I found out this years ago, and people said you're nuts, and I'm not. If you Google the word marijuana, Google will take you over here. If you Google the word cannabis, it'll take you over there. Even if you put with a word like medical in front of both of those terms, it'll take you to two different places.
Marijuana
the
stigmatized.
proper language is important. It just is. So let's get back to Heidi, okay?
Yeah. I wanted to say before you ask me my question, in all of my court filings, my legal filings, my professional filings, I always use cannabis. And I have reprimanded judges for using that term in front of me. So
Yeah, good for you.
we do have a culture, right? And a lot of that we can't stop, but it's also like using it in the appropriate context and places. When you're talking to children about it, that's what you should be calling it.
Yeah, we're the educators, and if we don't do it correctly, then we haven't done our job. That's my point, your point. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a question about religion here. I'm just curious if you know a fellow named, or have heard of a fellow named Carl Olson in Iowa.
I love Carl.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm following his case. I absolutely love Carl. What a sharp cookie.
yeah.
He is sharp as a tack. Yeah, I just found some beautiful legislation last night that I'm going to be sharing with him. So,
Well, we've been a guest on the Time for Hemp Broadcasting Network quite a few times, and he's coming on next as our next guest. So, Carl,
we're trying to get religious conversation together here, you know.
Yeah, he's really great. He's in Iowa or
Right.
Idaho. Iowa or Idaho, I forgot.
No, you're okay. Iowa. Yeah, he's been a battler for decades.
Since the 70s. Yeah, he was actually one of the first cannabis churches in the U.S.
That's right.
With Carl,
that's right. Yeah.
Right? And Eddie learned everything he did from Carl.
And Carl, when he was arrested at the time of his first arrest, it was the largest cannabis bust in American history at that time.
And then
when he got out of jail, he never smoked cannabis. But he fought for it. He made sure that he never smoked it. He wanted to never give them a chance to arrest him again. He wanted to stay on the outside so he could fight those guys that put him away in the first place.
Yeah.
He told me that too. That I asked him. I said, "You got to be smoking pot, man. You need to." I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And the same thing Casper said. He said, "They're going to ask me, Al, every time I go up in front of some committee or some cop, he's going to say, 'Well, you're a pot smoker.' No, actually, I'm not. And you're keeping me from being one, and that's against my religion, and you're screwing with me."
Yeah.
I got to give Carl. He's an amazing guy.
Yes, he is.
And again, we'll be talking to him next week. But I'm glad you know him. If not, I was going to put you together. Forget it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go back to what are you actually doing now?
So currently I am in Michigan. I have a church brick and mortar in Midtown Detroit, and it is a lounge as well. We have classes, we have lunch and learn, we have Sunday services, we have reggae nights. So we're trying to get the community active and together, providing them some education. Excuse me. And then we also, then there's that.
Is that your church?
No, that's not my church. That is another church in Detroit that got raided. And I came to their rescue.
Sorry.
Yeah, mine's a little different.
It was one of the links.
Yeah, that's the psychedelic healing shack. That belongs to Dr. Robert Pismenti, and he got raided. So I've been helping him out. We have a federal
Okay.
case going with the city. So I'm on it.
Well, with your church painted like that, I can only assume you would draw the attention of the authorities. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, the double jeopardy is my saving grace. There's nothing you can't arrest me for doing the same thing I did last time with 365 farms, 160 churches, and I'm doing it again. I might have taken 5 years off, but they followed me. They knew where I was. They knew what I was doing. I actually had some conversations with some alphabet crew, and I went to meet with them over somebody tried to rob me, and they intercepted. They saved my life. So anyway, they're not interested in the cannabis anymore. The alphabet gang, they could care less. What they care about is fentanyl. The good people, let's just say the good people anyway, and there are some good people in the alphabet gang fighting for us. I can promise you that. They
Now,
say,
you talk about
I
you
agree
talk about
completely. I agree completely.
you talk about descheduling. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Now let's think about this. You talk about tomatoes. If I'm going to get some ketchup or some tomato soup, I'm going to want somebody to inspect that to make certain that I'm not eating anything that I shouldn't. And if they're going to, like peanuts as an example, they use peanuts for medical purposes as well too, and put it in pharmaceutical stuff. So I'm going to want to make certain that the pharmaceuticals are doing the right things too. So how do you handle that kind of stuff when it comes to cannabis? Because cannabis is used for so many different things. You would think that there would be some avenues that would require some kind of like laws or regulations or
it's easy. It's easy. You got two kinds of use. You got personal use and medical use. There's nothing else. Personal use can be religious.
Food. There's food.
So what I would say is get together. Like, so what I'm doing as a church, right? We're self-regulating. My standards are hella better than California's ever could even think about, when it comes to organic and putting the love and blessing the plants and nurturing them and wanting them to heal people instead of making me millions of bucks. Right. So getting into private membership associations, if you're not into being a part of a church, or just find a spiritual organization. I'll be setting some up, and having the in-house, like self-regulating, like churches do. We self-regulate.
All right. Well, then another question that's been handed to me, in fact, just yesterday when I was seeing some medical professionals, when I was discussing this, they asked me, well, you know that the human brain continues to develop until you're about 25 years of age. So are you saying that people who are like 12 or 11 years old should be allowed to smoke cannabis? Somebody who's 16? Where do you draw the line? Do you want some kind of regulation on that?
Okay, listen, I went through this with 25 years ago with the American Medical Association and the American Nurses Association. They've decided that children, we've had kids as small as 2 years old, infants, use cannabis successfully. Thousands of them over the course of the world. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's two things to consider here to your questions. You've got what I want it deregulated. It's a plant. I want to be able to grow it in my backyard, and I want my neighbors to, and it shouldn't be any more obnoxious to anybody than if I was growing corn or anything else. On the other hand, I'm a patient. And if I want to go buy cannabis, I want it to have been regulated, labeled, tested. I want every nook and cranny of it covered. And therefore, in those kind of categories, all you have to do is have it Schedule 5. What's 5? OTC, over the counter. All that stuff you buy in CVS pharmacy is scheduled. It's not descheduled. It has a schedule, and it's 5. That means that the government has looked at it. It meets the purity standards. The description on the bottle is really what it is, et cetera, et cetera. So there's nothing to have. We can have a bifurcated future in that sense, that we can have freedom of the plant and anybody that wants to just grow it, and a regulated market to sell it to certain people. Age, therapeutically, medically, there is no age limit in my mind. An infant to 100, doesn't matter, it's good for you. If it's good for you, it's good for you. And then as far as recreationally, I got to leave that up to the parents.
We're up here in Canada, yeah.
I'm not going to pass a law to anybody that says you can't have your kid smoke a joint at 16 or you got to make them wait till 20. That's not my call. That's a family call. So I just leave it alone.
Yeah. Federally here in Canada, we're at 18. And the provinces can set their own age. Most of them have done a 19, and Quebec is at 21. But nobody's at the 25 mark.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a lot of people in the audience who would ask that question, so I had to.
Yeah. No,
Well, and we've heard from Heidi. She doesn't have any regulations. That she lets people live their life. That's what I'm hearing.
yes, but when we have storefronts and we have commercial operations for the church, we have extremely strict protocols in place.
Oh, well, what is it?
Or we are all organic. We are making sure that we have great genetics, right? Making sure that all our SOPs are in order, making sure our growers are in good spiritual health, making sure we visit the plants every month and do blessings and ceremonies. We also have during with the brick and mortars, we have very specific SOPs, certain language, certain things we do and we don't do, internal stuff that you'll have to come to one of our churches when we open near you.
Yeah, I'll be there. Sure, why not? So Michigan now, I've been hearing from folks that come down here in Florida to visit frequently from Ohio, that they drive to Michigan to buy their cannabis, even though it's legal in Ohio, because of the price is supposed to be very low there. Is that?
Oh, they're doing a corporate squeeze out for the smaller shops. I guess they grew way too much weed this year. The prices are dropping. The taxes are going up. It's unsurvivable. The little guys, it's unsurvivable for, because they're going to end up going under or getting bought out. And they're doing it on purpose. Big corporation wants to take over. The war is still on cannabis, our natural medicine. They're not ready to let it go. They're never going to let it go. They're going to kick and fight tooth and nail. But as long as we keep standing up and organizing against them, we will get it back. Like with me, my church. Join my church. If you get in trouble, I'll come for you. If you want to have a branch and do a commercial operation, then you can go through my vetting team, and we make sure you have the COAs. We make sure that everything is in place, that no one's stealing water, no one's stealing power. All of it is beneficial runoff, all types of things like that. We make sure. So we were the shining star of California. Like almost all of my farms were organic. Not all of them. We were working on some of them. But even in my trial, like the DA was like, she had the best weed in California. She was getting $30,000 a pound.
What?
And I was like, well, that's not true. That's not true. But
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
when I come after you, I'll take 3,000.
Well, Michigan's really interesting history with cannabis. When I was a kid, Michigan was, I think, the only state that had legal cannabis at the time. You could, like, in some places it was, in some places it wasn't. You could even go into a bar and buy it. And then all of a sudden they outlawed it. Then they halfway legalized it. Then they outlawed it again. And then now they made it all legal. So it's really an interesting history of Michigan. What's going on with these laws there now?
Well, I was just at Michigan Hash Bash, and funny you asked that. I have one of the top lobbyists for Michigan Weedsters sitting right here next to me. Would you like to ask him?
Is it Marvin? Is it Marvin?
Rick Anstis.
Hi,
Hi, Rick.
Hey,
Rick, do you remember? Do you know Marvin from the party?
Yeah, everybody's got to know that guy, right?
Well, Next time you talk to Marvin from the party, you tell him I said howdy.
I'll do.
Yeah, me too. I haven't seen him for decades, but yeah, the party, man. He was always fun to have around.
He was. Anyway,
got
so
some
what's
great
going on
pictures.
there in Michigan with the cannabis laws?
Oh, it's the same atrocity that it's always been. We were duped into bending the knee to recreational, and I liked what you said earlier in the sense of using cannabis versus marijuana or pot or dope or whatever. It's the language. So what really screwed us up medically here and has really oppressed us getting to the patient and the information to the patient is recreational. So the word itself is destroying everything, the essence of the plant. So I'm really trying to push back on the medical aspects and the things that got us here, which was medical, and it was the testimonies of the people that came from everywhere in the state of Michigan. We had 324,000 signatures on a ballot that the state said they didn't want to, go get it if you can do it, and we did. And they even put it to a vote in the state of Michigan. You actually get to write the law. So we even wrote this law, and it's still been just twisted upside down and full of lies and minimize the opportunity and the education of this plant.
And people still get raided, of course.
And my hands are up for Oklahoma. Everybody in Oklahoma, continue doing what you're doing, because I know they voted it down the last time it came through recreational. And if they can, anybody that's in that position should continue that.
Well, yeah, the other thing that may help you now is federal law for veterans is that if the state has illegal cannabis, then the Veterans Administration can admit that cannabis use by the veteran in their treatment protocol.
Yes.
So if anybody starts arguing that in your state or any other state, that this should be decriminalized or go away, what they're actually going to do is put all their veterans in a place where they can't use it medically again. And
Right.
I'll tell you what, somebody tries to pull that off. Yeah, right, exactly. That's a bad scene, and I can't imagine the population in any state would want that. But I'm not sure that the population of any state knows that. And the reason I bring that up is because we've got 10 states in the United States that do not have a positive cannabis law, either medical or recreational. And the vets in those states can't use cannabis as a medicine and get treated in the VA.
Well, those are the states.
I can smoke cannabis right here on the camera and walk over to the VA hospital in Florida, and they'll say, "Hi, Al, what's up? What do you need?" If those other states, I get sent home. I get told to get off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Indiana is one of those states where you get sent home. My next door neighbor can't smoke cannabis because his doctor tests him each time he goes in for his heart treatment. And if he comes up positive, they will not give him the treatment he needs for his heart care.
I pointed out again, I went to Notre Dame, Indiana, and the Pope has said, hey, if it's good for him, let him have it. Well, here's Indiana, Notre Dame. If you don't, Notre Dame's got some pull in Indiana, and yet they haven't made the call. And so there's a lot of people here that need us to tell them what we're telling each other right now. And,
right. I live 30 minutes north of South Bend, Indiana, and we're a border town and border state there, and there is a huge influx of Indiana people, right, coming. So they're well aware, fully, probably Catholic Church has probably been well aware of this for a long, long time. Why they're not engaging and helping the state get to their people and just accepting Michigan's things. And then even now, if you have a Michigan medical marijuana card, and you get popped in Indiana, you'll just get probation. So because it can overrule a doctor in another
partial recognition.
Yeah, it's weird here because all the states around us have legalized cannabis, and Indiana's a holdout. And I've said it before in the show. Al have heard me say this, but when it's 3 o'clock in California and noon in New York, that means it's 1955 in Indiana.
Yeah, this is why you got to do it federally. This is why I say federally legalize it.
Right.
That
And
way-
that's what
that
we're
way you
trying
have-
to do with our blueprint with the mothership is we are
Yeah.
trying to go into every state, especially the states with no medical, and open the churches and get them up and running, because my philosophy is always veterans first, right? We always want to serve our veterans the way they've served us, and then patients, and then whatever else falls after that. But that's our priorities, and getting people healed spiritually, especially with the mushrooms and veterans, and saying goodbye to depression. There's the door.
Mhm.
It's working, right? And it will save lives, countless millions of lives, once we get these open and get them all over. And then my next trick will be with getting my DEA religious exemption, which is the DE5. Only 3 churches have that. That's the UDV, Queen of the Holy Light, and now the Eagle and Condor. And those were only given in the last 53 years by court order. So now that the new administration has changed, and the judge in the Eagle and Condor told the DEA, well, they gave Eagle and Condor judgment 2.2 million. And the judge said, you need to redo the administrative process and make this make sense, because they've denied everybody. So that is in the works. Of course, the DEA, you see how long it takes them to do anything. But the DE5 religious exemption allows you to import and export Thailand, Uruguay, Jamaica, Paraguay. So other countries are now opening up with that. So I'm hoping I asked them, can I have them now? No, just wait. But things are looking good, when we get to that point of getting that actual certificate.
How long are you looking? Like, what's that process like?
I would say 18 months. And if they don't give it to me by then, I'll just make my own and get a boat and go, bye.
Take me to court.
I'm a pirate now.
Yeah, I'm not sure the urgency is seen by people that you're talking about. 18 months, and they're in a process. And I'm a veteran, and I'm watching 40 or 50 of my brothers and sisters die by suicide every day.
How many are we at now?
Well, I don't know. Well, all I can tell you is that I started counseling Vietnam veterans back in 1990. And by that time, 1990, more vets had committed suicide than died there. And I think now more vets have committed suicide that died there and were wounded there. So we're up to about 350 to 400,000.
Cannabis can do so much for them.
And now you throw in, the Gulf War and the Somalia guys and God knows who else, the Korea still. The veteran says that the Veteran Administration put out a few years back that 22 a day died by suicide. That wasn't a real number. They made it up. They asked a few states to give it an input, and then they extrapolated out to 50 in the territories, I suppose, or maybe they just left them out. Who knows? But anyway, those of us that really do this stuff with veteran work, we've thought for years. And I've really found no expert in the veteran world that disagrees with me. We're talking 50 or 60 a day because they don't talk drug overdoses. Drug overdoses are suicide.
Right.
A vet hits a bridge at 100 miles an hour at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's an auto accident. So there's all sorts of misgivings there. But again, to all of the patients that we're all trying to help, they're sick, by the way, and they need this medicine. And like we've been saying for decades, if you're gonna take a medicine, take this one first. Take all that other shit last. Or if you're really smart, do what Heidi did. Don't take them at all. Just leave it alone. Enough of my rant. I'm sorry.
I love it. I mean, we have a big presence of both things here, veterans and children in Michigan. We have over 215 medical cannabis children here in Michigan. Wow. And that's a remarkable thing. We have a long list of qualifying conditions from cerebral palsy to, it's autism. These things are been worked on by a lot of great Michiganders, Amy Carter being one of them. With Jaden's Law, we're currently pushing to now that you can be a minor patient in the state of Michigan. When you're in a public school, you can't use your cannabis. So if you use RSO for your autism that allows you to go to public school, now you have to go 1,000 yards or 1,000 feet away from the school and be administered by your parent, and then you can come back to school. That's an unnecessary thing.
Totally.
Unnecessary. That's
Yeah.
inhuman.
One of
Yeah,
the things we're talking about doing too is now implementing, let's say I have a church member with a child, right? Now
Mhm.
isn't it only just medical? Now you've got to deal with the federal law. Now you're going to exempt my child religiously. And that's like, there's some bad consequences for that, not just discriminating against cannabis, but now you're discriminating against a religious group. So, and we're really trying to push the education. Like, you don't have to be religious. All you got to do is smoke weed religiously. That's it.
Well, I do have a couple of questions here. The last time I was in Michigan, let's see, that was 2003. And when I drove through Michigan, I was freaked out. It was like a third world country. City after city after city was vacant. Factory after factory was shut down. When I rolled in Detroit, someone was going to buy me a house to take care of for them, and Detroit was just like a third world country. Almost every block they were ripping out the street lights for the copper that was in. Even the city was doing that. The city was not even paying the bill. And so did they, one, legalize cannabis for the financial boom that it would bring to their state? And then two, my other question is, and then I'll shut up, is you've got a governor who is a total witch on every level. And is that particular individual being a hindrance to your work? So
Yeah.
Did Michigan re-legalize it for the financial boom, and do you have a witch standing in your way?
Yes, and we did it for the people. So the way I interpreted the law that I voted for on the recreational side was that it was going to be given to people like myself, our opportunity. Where it first went south was in the early writings of it, or the final writings of it, of the law. We compromised at the table. I don't know who was at the table, but we did a 2-year wait on any out-of-state interest in our industry, right? And the first license that came online was 18 months later. So what we should have done is said 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, give us our goddamn industry, give us our opportunity that we fought so hard for, but we didn't do that. So that one right there really, really screwed it, because that's when the outside interest came in. That's when the outside money come in. And we could have done this $3 billion industry by we, the people of the state of Michigan, and all prospered, had new homes and living fat. But we chose to go the other more corporate route. And I truly believe that that has everything to do with Gretchen Whitmer, Dana Nessel, and her entire horde of people that run our state. I don't know where the money's going. I look and I'm digging. There's a lot of general funds. So all of the metric money, all the fines and fees, they go to the general fund in the state of Michigan. I don't know what that means. I know it's got a lot of broad abilities, but yet we're still, we're still short $470 million to fix the fucking road 6 years later after she campaigned on it. So, and now she's also thinking about doing what they're doing in New York, which is to basically put a toll on downtown. So after 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., if you're downtown area, you'll be told $30 or whatever. That's what they do in New York and Manhattan. It doesn't make any sense. So hopefully there's a awakening, and our people are going to start pushing back at this.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we have been on for quite a while now, and it's time to wrap up the program so we don't lose our audience. Is there anything, Heidi, or you and your buddy want to say to the audience before we say so long, farewell, bye-bye?
Yeah, first, thank you for your time. I hope it was very well spent. And I would just like to say thank you to all our veterans. Always remember them for their service. Not only them, our cannabis war veterans as well. We have a lot of POWs still sitting in cells, and we need to get them out. Descheduling will do that, or church at some point if people got on board. And yeah, just I really appreciate your time, Casper and Al. So thank you all so much.
It was our pleasure.
And,
It really was.
and with Heidi being up in Michigan, she's on the border of Canada. And so that's really exciting, so that when Canada becomes our 51st state, we'll be able to welcome them right in, right? And with that said, I'll pass the baton over to Al Graham, and he can let everybody know about PACE Radio Network.
PACE Radio Network, People Advocating Cannabis Education.net. We do interviews with patients, we have discussions, and we also have show programming on psychedelics as well. And seeing a big push in everything on the psychedelic end in the news, and people are wanting to know more about it. So we help spread the word.
Al, Byrne, remind people about your fantastic book, because it really is a valuable read, and I encourage everybody to go to Amazon and get it.
Yeah, thanks. It's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books. It's everywhere that you buy a book, especially online. For country and cannabis, for country part, I did 24 years in the United States Navy. I'm very proud of that. The interface of cannabis with the military over those 24 years is sort of the first third of the book. And the last half is it's two things. I hope to the reader, I hope it's a history lesson and an educational book. It's 360 pages long. So if you don't like to read, skip it. But if you really are in this cannabis world, you need to understand how you get to where you are today. And that's what this book lays on. How did this really go down anyway? How did we get here? Because most of the people listening to this show do not understand that 20 years ago, or it was hard. 40 years ago, you went to jail. So you need to understand how this all happened, and more importantly, who did it. The majority of the people I write about in the book back in the 80s, 90s are dead. And I wanted them to be remembered just for who they were, heroes, heroines. And I wanted you to know what they said. And that's the other reason that Casper and I are doing this Time for Hemp. He mentioned it, but it's very important. Time for Hemp not only is going to have you see this show forever, but it's also going to have an archive that you can dunk into, and you can hear from these experts, men, women, patients, whoever, about why they use it, how they use it, and what it did for them. And it's all in the book. The other part of the book is that same education. There's hundreds of pages there that explain, usually by using a patient to tell a story, why cannabis works for epilepsy, why cannabis works for any kind of spasticity problem, why it works for Crohn's disease, sickle cell. All of this stuff is discussed in the book and giving you a little bit of idea of what this plant's really all about. And you will see that I continually refer to it as a plant. I continually refer to it as a nutritional plant as well as a therapeutic plant. It's a good book. I don't make much money on it. I make a couple of bucks. You buy it, I make $2. I'm okay. I don't need the money right now. But I want you to buy the book. And if you're a cannabis patient, if you're a professional, MD, RN, LPN, somebody that runs a dispensary, a bud tender, you ought to know what's in this book.
And Al is right. We have an archive that is amazing. And it is the reason why I continue this work. There are people who have come on to Time for Hemp And they came on just shortly before they passed away. And they did so that everybody would know how cannabis helped. And they wanted to make certain that their voice was added to that and would always be heard. And that is why I maintain the archives, is so that their voices will always be heard. If you go into our archives, you'll find several interviews from Eddie Lepp, Jack Hare, and many other people who are no longer with us, but they are the pioneers of this movement. And you hear how they struggled. Eddie came on shortly after he was arrested the first time for growing cannabis. And he came on the second time, and the third time he was arrested. And shortly before he went to jail and right after he got out. And you hear the history of the movement growing over a period of time. And you begin to understand the struggles that these people faced, real struggles in their path in life. And that history is of real value. I'm also blessed to have my two joint hosts on the program. Very good friends. Al Byrne was a joint host on Time for Hemp on a regular basis and also had Patients at a Time and Veterans Voices. Many of those archives are still available on the website. And Al Graham has Pace Radio archives on the network as well, and is found as a joint host. And we have worked hard to let the whole world know it's time for hemp.
Bye-bye.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of